So at this time, we've checked out all three of the new flagships from Xiaomi, OnePlus and Vivo, the Xiaomi 14 Pro, the OnePlus 12 and the Vivo X100 Pro. Let's put them together and see which one fares out better in comparison. And let's also check out their cameras because Xiaomi has a partnership with Leica for the cameras, OnePlus has a partnership with Hasselblad for the cameras, and Vivo has a partnership with Zeiss for the cameras. So let's see how their cameras also stack up. Let's talk about the Xiaomi 14 Pro in terms of build and design. It's really nice looking and it also has a really good build quality. It has a titanium frame option as well, which I will highly recommend because not only is it lighter, it feels great in the hand and is also a lot more durable in terms of its build. If you don't like titanium for whatever reason, you can also pick an aluminium version, which is also available in a few colors if that's what you're looking for. The overall look and feel of the Xiaomi 14 Pro is preferred by me. I like the squared off camera at the back and I also like the symmetrical bezels on the front and the overall rounded off finish of the edges, which feels really nice and premium. Overall, Xiaomi's come a long way as far as their designs for phones are concerned and I really like the 14 Pro's design. What's also great is that this phone is IP68 rated, so it's highly water resistant and dust resistant. And also on the front is a ceramic shield-like glass, which Xiaomi calls Longjing glass. So whether it's made in partnership with Corning or not, we're not sure, but it's a ceramic shield-esque glass, so it has that tendency to be extra durable. If we talk about the OnePlus 12, it also has a ceramic shield-like glass which is called Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2. And in terms of build, it's got an aluminium build along with glass on the front and glass on the back, much like the other phone. And with respect to water resistance, it only has IP65. So it's only splash or basic rain resistant. It's not immersion resistant. And I would keep this phone away from water as much as you can. There's also the rounded off camera bump at the back, which you may or may not like. I'm not a big fan of this design, but OnePlus has had this for a few generations and it looks good on the OnePlus Open, so I'm assuming they went with it because of that. The front also has rounded off edges as far as the display is concerned, not on all four sides, but the front, and it looks pretty good because of that. If we talk about the Vivo X100, it's got an IP68 water and dust resistance, which means that it is much more resilient than the OnePlus 12. And also the build is pretty similar in terms of an aluminium plus glass construction. You also have a vegan leather option for the back, which only comes in the top model, but then you get this orange color, which I'm not a big fan of, but I really like the texture of the material. So if they had more color options, this would have been nice. But then you can also pick this black color, which has a brushed off finish done onto it. So it's got a matte glass on the back, which I think looks a lot more premium and feels exceptional in the hand. And the edges of the back as well as the front are rounded off, so it looks great because of that. Now, as far as display is concerned, Xiaomi comes out on top here with a LTPO AMOLED display at 6.73 inches, which does have 68 billion colors, which is impressive, 120 Hz of refresh rate and HDR10 Plus with 3000 nits of peak brightness. The resolution of the display is 3200 pixels by 1440 pixels, which gives it 522 pixels per inch. The OnePlus 12 has a slightly larger display at 6.82 inches, the same LTPO AMOLED, but only 1 billion colors with 120 Hz refresh rate, and you still get HDR10 Plus and 4500 nits of peak brightness. This resolution is a 3168 by 1440 and it gives you a total of 510 pixels per inch. The Vivo X100 Pro has a 6.78 inch display with an LTPO AMOLED screen. Again, 1 billion colors, 120 Hz of refresh rate and 3000 nits of peak brightness. And the resolution is the lowest out of the three with 2800 by 1260, giving it only 453 pixels per inch. So overall, in terms of the display, if you ignore the 4500 nits of peak brightness that OnePlus can deliver, the Xiaomi 14 Pro does have better colors, a better pixel per inch density, and just an overall nicer looking display according to me. Now, all three of these phones are running different softwares. Xiaomi runs Xiaomi's new Hyper OS on Android 14, whereas OnePlus, this one runs Color OS, but when it launches in India, it will have Oxygen OS 14 on Android 14, and the Vivo, it has been launched in India and it runs FunTouch 14 on Android 14. As far as the hardware is concerned, both the Xiaomi 14 Pro and the OnePlus 12 have Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chip, with similar specifications and similar GPU as well as CPU cores. And the Vivo X100 has a MediaTek Dimensity 9300. All three of these chips are 4 nanometer and they are pretty well placed in terms of their performance as well as benchmarks. And we put them through the paces on gaming as well as day-to-day use. And all three of these phones came out on top. One thing that you need to know about OnePlus is that by default, it is running on a medium power mode and you need to put it on a high performance mode to get the maximum performance out of this phone. But even at medium performance, we did not feel like this phone was slow in any way. Only benchmark scores come out less. Once you put it on high performance mode, the benchmark scores also match up, but the performance doesn't really improve that much because you are getting pretty good performance anyway. I understand that they've done this to improve battery life, so if you want better battery life, you might consider putting it on lower performance, especially if you're not gaming all the time. One other advantage of the OnePlus is that it is available in a 1TB plus 24GB RAM option. And then all three of these phones offer RAM expansion via virtual RAM. And all three of these phones have UFS 4.0 storage. So that is great. The Xiaomi 14 Pro as well as the Vivo X100 have a maximum of 1TB with 16GB of RAM as the option. All three of these phones have really impressive speakers as well. So you have stereo speakers on all of these and overall the displays look great. And coming back to the Xiaomi 14 Pro, I think the display as well as the speakers are the best on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Now let's talk about cameras. The Xiaomi 14 Pro has a partnership with Leica, so it does have a Leica lens on the back. The main camera is a 50 megapixel camera with an f1.4 aperture. This is an adjustable aperture, and unlike Samsung's two-stop aperture, this is a multi-stop variable aperture that goes from f1.4 to f4, and you can control this manually completely. And this gives you a lot of control over your photographs, over the bokeh, the background, all of those things, if that's something that you're looking for. You also have phase detect autofocus as well as laser autofocus on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, which gives you really accurate focus and focus points. And then you also have two other 50 megapixel cameras. One is a telephoto camera at an f2 aperture as well as an ultra wide with a 115-degree field of view at an f2.2 aperture. The OnePlus 12 has a 50 megapixel main camera with an f1.6 aperture. Now this is a fixed aperture based camera, so it may not allow as much light as Xiaomi's f1.4 at the lower end. But they are pretty well matched in terms of the overall design. The size of this sensor is slightly larger as well. You still get PDAF and optical image stabilization, but you don't get laser autofocus like you do on Xiaomi. The telephoto camera here is an f2.6, so again lesser light through the sensor, but this is also a 64 megapixel sensor and then a 48 megapixel ultra wide with an f2.2, so light wise it is matched, and the ultra wide sensor also has PDAF, which is great. All three of the sensors have phase detect autofocus, which is great, but no laser autofocus on this device. On the Vivo X100 Pro, again you have a very similar camera setup, 350 megapixel cameras with the main camera with an f1.8 aperture. So the lowest in terms of light allowance or the amount of light that can be passed through to the sensor, it's at f1.8. Xiaomi was at f1.4 and OnePlus was at f1.6. The Vivo X100 Pro does have phase detect autofocus as well as laser autofocus. And for the other cameras, you have a 50 megapixel telephoto camera with f2.5 and a 50 megapixel f2.0 ultra wide camera. So ultra wide has the most amount of light coming in from all of these phones. The Xiaomi 14 Pro can shoot 8K at 24 frames per second and 4K at 24, 30 and 60 frames per second. You also have super slow-mo at 960 frames per second. OnePlus 12 Pro can do 8K at 24 frames per second, 4K at 30 and 60 frames per second, and slow-mo at up to 240 frames per second. And finally, the Vivo X100 Pro can do 8K at 30 frames per second, 4K at 30 and 60 frames per second, and super slow-mo at 1080p at 240 frames per second. As far as OIS is concerned, both the main camera as well as the telephoto camera on all three of these phones have optical image stabilization, and then you also have electronic image stabilization available for all three of these devices. Let's look at some of the camera samples that we have over here, and we'll put them side by side so you can decide for yourself which one you like better. Here is a video sample from the Xiaomi 14 Pro at 4K 60 frames per second. Here is a sample of the OnePlus 12 at 4K 60 frames per second. Here is a sample from the Vivo X100 Pro at 4K 60 frames per second. All three of these phones also have a 32 megapixel front-facing or selfie camera, and it comes out with some really impressive images. Here are some samples for you to check out. The front camera on the Xiaomi 14 Pro can do 4K at up to 60 frames per second. OnePlus 12 can only do 4K at 30 frames per second, and the Vivo X100 Pro can only do 1080p at 60 frames per second. Now, as far as battery is concerned, the Xiaomi 14 Pro has a smaller 4880 mAh battery, which supports really fast 120 watts of wired charging. You also get 50 watts of wireless charging as well as 10 watts of reverse wireless charging, so you can charge your earphones, whatever. OnePlus 12 can also do 100 watts of wired charging, and it has a larger 5400 mAh battery. It also supports 50 watts of wireless charging as well as 10 watts of reverse wireless charging. The Vivo X100 Pro has two batteries. Both of them match up to give you a total of 5400 mAh battery, along with 100 watts of wired charging and 50 watts of wireless charging. And it does support reverse charging, so if you want to charge some accessories, you can do that. All three of these phones also have a USB Type-C 3.2 port, whereas the Xiaomi 14 Pro has a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port, so it's slightly faster in comparison to the other two devices. Overall, all three of these phones are really impressive, with the Vivo X100 Pro really impressing us with the camera capabilities and some of the images that we saw from the camera. It has been optimized really well, whether it's been done by Zeiss, whether it's been done by Vivo. The overall output from the images is really impressive. Some of the pictures that we took came out really impressive, and we really like the end result. It does, however, let us down in certain things. It does not have 4K on the front camera, as well as the video quality leaves a lot to be desired from this flagship device. The OnePlus 12 will be a good all-round option with really good hardware as well as really good optimizations for software, and when it launches in India, it'll have Oxygen OS, which is one of the cleanest forms of a Android skin that is done by a manufacturer, and we really like that as well. So that'll be a good option for people who are looking for something like that while keeping most of the hardware at a really higher end. The Xiaomi 14 Pro, however, does stand out in this comparison with a better overall build quality and offering the best specifications out of the lot, with a better display, with better colors and just better pixel density, and also a really nice design with the squared off back but rounded off display. And overall, the feel in the hand is really the best out of all three of these devices. You're also not compromising on any other specifications. The battery is the smallest with 4880 mAh, but it's still enough to do a day plus of use on this device. Xiaomi's new HyperOS is also very well optimized, and the video quality from the camera was also the best out of all three of these devices. Which one is your favorite and which one would you pick? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, smash like, hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.